Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share, coming to you today from the beautiful Mishnah Berurah of Camp Yeshiva Staten Island, upstate, on some business, but of course we're going to have share. So we are holding a Mishnah Berurah Chelik Aleph, and we will be learning in today's share Mirza Hashem, Daf Lamed Aleph Amid Beis. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Tzitzis. We begin today on Lamed Aleph, Amid Aleph, bottom line in the Mechaber, with a brand new Siman, Dinei Tzitzis Bebeis HaKvaros, the halachas that pertain to wearing tzitzits in a beis hakvaros, in a cemetery. Ubay gimel seifim, and here we have 3 seifim. Says the Mechaber, Sif Aleph, Mutar likanes bebeis hakvaros v'hu lavush tzitzits. It is permissible to enter a beis hakvaros while you are wearing tzitzits. However, there's a very important caveat to that halacha. V'hu shelo yehe nigrar al hakvaros. However, we have to be careful that the tzitzits do not drag over the individual kvaros. We don't want to have the tzitzit strings dragging over a grave. Aval imhu nigrar al hakvaros. If the tzitzits are dragging on a grave, aser, then this is forbidden, mishum loyeg l'rush, because of the iser of being loyeg l'rush, which means denigrating a poor person. That's what it means literally. This is based on a pasuk in Mishlei. The pasuk in Mishlei says, loyeg l'rush, one who mocks or denigrates a pauper, cheref oisehu, it is if he is denigrating the Rabbeinu Shalom, chas v'shalom. We know that the Rabbeinu Shalom identifies very much and takes care of those who are disadvantaged. So if somebody goes ahead and denigrates a poor person, the Torah Dirshu looks at it as if he is actually denigrating the Rabbeinu Shalom himself, chas v'chalila. Now, what's the problem of loyeg l'rush when it comes to going into a beis hakvaros and having the tzitzits drag on the kvaros? The problem is that the mesim, the niftarim, they don't have the ability to be mekayim mitzvahs. And that is a thorn in the side of the mesim. A lot of niftarim, they look back with regret. They say, look at the riches that I could have accumulated while I was alive. While I was alive in Olam Hazeh, I could have spent another minute chapping another mitzvah, another minute learning another shtickle Torah, another little bit of stock I could have given, another bit of help I could have done for somebody. And now they're mesim, down there niftarim, and that's it. They don't have these opportunities anymore. So if you come into the beis hakvaros, which is the domain of the niftarim, and you take your tzitzits and you allow your tzitzits to drag on the kever, it's as if you're kind of poking the mace in the eye, and you're coming and you're saying, look, me, I'm here in Olam Hazeh, I could do mitzvahs. You don't have the ability to do mitzvahs. You're mocking him, and that would be a problem of cheref oisehu. Hang on just 1 second over here. I want to see if I could make a quick change to the camera over here. I see it's very overly bright. Let me see if I could just fix that. Hang on 1 second. Let's try that. Okay, that should be a little bit more pleasing to the eye. Sorry for the little interruption over there. Okay. Now, continues the Mechaber, top line, Lamed Aleph Amid Beis. Bamed dvarim amurim. When does this halacha apply? B'yamehem, that applies back in the day. Shahayu matilim tzitzis b'malbush shaloivshim l'tzayrech atzmam. This halacha, says the Mechaber, which halacha? The fact that we only have a problem of loyeg l'rush if the tzitzis drag on the kever. When is that true? That's in days gone by when people used to wear 4-cornered cloaks. Our garments generally are not 4-cornered begadim. We wear a talis cotton so that we should have a 4-cornered garment to put tzitzits on. Back in the olden days, they wore a 4-cornered cloak. So in that case, the regular clothing that they were wearing was chayiv and tzitzis. Says the Mechaber, that there's only a problem of loyeg l'rush if the tzitzit strings drag on the kvarim. When is that true? B'yameim, in the olden days, shayu matilim tzitzis b'malbush shaloivshim l'tzarech atzmam, when they were putting on tzitzits on their regular garments. In that case, there's only a problem of loyeg l'rush if the tzitzis drag on the kever. Why? Because the fact that you're wearing tzitzits because your regular begadim require tzitzits. So it's not so much that you're walking into the Beis HaKfaros and you're saying, look at me, I'm wearing tzitzits, you can't wear tzitzits. You're wearing tzitzits because your regular begadim require tzitzits. When is there a problem of like a rush? If you actually drag the tzitzits on the kever, then it's like you're poking the mace in the eye. You're saying, look at me, I'm wearing tzitzits, you're not. But the fact that you have tzitzits on your shirt, on your regular begadim, I have to have tzitzits on my begadim. But contrast that to us. Our regular begadim do not require tzitzits. So the whole reason we're wearing a talis cotton is kedei to be mechayev ourselves in the mitzvah of tzitzits. In that case, we're poking the mace in the eye, even if we don't drag the tzitzits on the kever. Because, look at me, I'm wearing a beged to be mechayev myself in tzitzits. That's not something that you could do. Therefore, says the mechaber, b'amed dvar mamurim, when is this true? That there's only a problem of like l'rush if you drag the tzitzits on the kever. B'yimeim, in the olden days, shayu matilim tzitzits b'malba shaloivshim l'zarech atzmam. That's back in the days when they wore tzitzits on their regular clothing. Aval anu, but us, she'ein mechavne behem elo l'shem mitzvah, by us, where our entire wearing of a talis cotton is only l'shem mitzvah, aser afilu einam nigrarim. Then there's a problem of leg l'rush, even if the tzitzits do not drag on the grave. V'hani mili kishat tzitziyaitz megulim, but this is only a problem if the tzitzit strings are uncovered, if they're out in the open. Avalam heim mechusim mutter. But if the tzitzit strings are covered, then it's mutter, then there's no problem. So what do we have over here so far in Sif Aleph? The Mechaber is introducing us to the problem of leg l'rush cheref oisehu. You come into a Beis HaKfaros, you have to be very sensitive to the fact that you are now walking into the domain of the niftarim. And we want to make sure that it doesn't look like we're mocking the niftarim. Therefore, if you're wearing tzitzits regularly, you have a regular garment that requires tzitzits, so then there's only a problem if you drag the tzitzits on the kever. If you drag the tzitzits on the kever, it's as if you're poking the nifter in the eye and you're saying, look at me, I'm wearing tzitzits, you're not. And you can't wear tzitzits. Us, we don't wear tzitzits on our regular garments. Therefore, we're even worse as far as the mace is concerned. Because the whole fact that we're wearing a talis cotton l'shem mitzvah, if we walk into the Beis HaKfaros showing that we could wear a talis cotton l'shem mitzvah while the niftarim can't, that already creates a problem of leg l'rush cherev oisehu. But, says the Mechaber, this is only a problem if the tzitzits are out. If the tzitzits are tucked in, if the tzitzits are put away, then there's no problem of leg l'rush. Practical takeaway, nowadays, when you go to a Beis HaKfaros, you should make sure, if you're in the habit of wearing your tzitzits out, you should make sure to tuck your tzitzits in before you go to the Beis HaKfaros. Says the Mishnah Berurah here on Laban Aleph Amud Beis, Mishnah Berurah is cutting Aleph. Loyig l'rush. What is the problem of loyig l'rush? Shenira kemecharef. It looks like you're belittling the niftarim, she'enam yechaylim l'kayim es mitzvahs, that they don't have the ability to be mekayim mitzvahs while you do. Ice cotton bays, l'tzarech atzmam. Back in the day, people wore tzitzits on their regular begadim that they wore l'tzarech atzmam, for their own purposes. Again, what does this mean? This means back in the days, people wore a four-cornered cloak. The fact that they put on that four-cornered cloak was not l'shem mitzvah. They didn't put on that cloak in order to be mekayim a mitzvah. They put on that cloak because that was their shirt. Once they were wearing that cloak, they had to put on tzitzits. We don't wear a beged, a talis cotton, l'tzarech atzmam. We don't do it for our own purposes. We only wear a talis cotton l'shem mitzvah. Ice cotton bays, l'tzarech atzmam, shahaya oz minig bigdayim asuya b'nei arba kanfais. Back in the olden days, the regular begadim were four-cornered begadim. Ice cotton gimel, the Mechaber said this whole halacha is only problematic if the tzitzis are uncovered. But imhei mechusim, if the tzitzis strings are covered, then you don't have a problem, says the Mishnah Berurah. Kigoin, for example, shamakbi es atzitzit shal atalas godel takas kanfei ksusai. For example, let's say you're wearing a talis gadol and you want to walk into a beis hakvaros. If you take the tzitzit strings of the talis gadol and you tuck them in, so you're hiding the strings, then it's okay. Continues the Mishnah Berurah and he says, "Omei high timer," and for the same reason, gam betalis cotton shaloiv shoy takas lamadov. If you're wearing a talis cotton under your shirt, and the tzitzits are also under the shirt, ein by mishum loig l'rosh. There is no problem of loig l'rosh. Kevin shuhu mechusa, since it's covered up. Im loy shaholich b'lilav sha'elyain. Unless it's a hot summer day, and you went to the Beis HaKfaros on Tisha B'Av, and it's 100 degrees outside, and you're not wearing your shirt. So you're coming in wearing your talis cotton uncovered. Now you would have a problem because now your tzitzit strings are uncovered, so you would have to tuck them into the corners of the talis cotton. By the way, I think that there's a shtickle raya from this Mishnah Berurah over here to something that I said much earlier. If you remember back at the beginning of Hilchas Tzitzis, and I see I'm having a little trouble over here with the camera again, it's only because I'm using a different camera than I usually use because I'm on the road. So let me just see if we can get this right. Bear with me. Okay. So we had earlier the Mishnah Berurah's whole discussion of the question of wearing the tzitzits covered or uncovered, wearing the tzitzits tucked in or not tucked in. It's not over here. Yeah, so we had the Mishnah Berurah, where the Mishnah Berurah seems to be very hard on those that don't wear their tzitzits out. The world learns this Mishnah Berurah and tries to bring a raya from this Mishnah Berurah that you have to wear your tzitzits out. That's on your Daled Amud Beis, Siman Ches, Mishnah Berurah, Eis Katan Chav Vav. The Mechaber says over there in Sif Yod Aleph, Iker mitzvahs talis cotton l'loiv shay al begodav. That the Iker mitzvah of a talis cotton is to wear the talis cotton al begodav, over your other begodim, kedei shetamid yir'eyu v'yizkar ha-mitzvahs, so that you should always be able to see the tzitzits and remember the mitzvahs. And the Mishnah Berurah says, Kimad Iksiv, like the pasuk says, Ure'isem oisai uzachartem. You're supposed to see the tzitzits and remember the mitzvahs. And then the Mishnah Berurah says, V'oisan ha'anoshim ha-mesimin ha-tzitzis b'ha-mechdasayim shalahem. Those people who take the tzitzit strings and tuck them into their pants, loy daishem ha'alimin eineim. It's not enough that they're hiding their eyes. Mimai diksiv ure'isem oisai uzachartem. From the pasuk that says, Ure'isem oisai uzachartem, Oid mevazen heinas ha-mitzvahs Hashem yisparach. They're being mevazen the mitzvah of Hashem. V'asidin hein liteinas hadin al zeh. And they're going to have to, they're osad liteinas hadin. So a lot of people read this Mishnah Berurah and they say, oh, the Mishnah Berurah is talking about those people who don't wear their tzitzits out. Look, it's a beferish Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah says if you tuck your tzitzits in to your pants, it's a terrible thing. Osad liteinas hadin. I believe that they are reading this Mishnah Berurah wrong. The reason they're reading the Mishnah Berurah wrong is because what's the Mishnah Berurah here talking about? The Mishnah Berurah is going on the Mechaber. What does the Mechaber say? The Mechaber says, Iker mitzvahs talis cotton l'loiv shay al begodav. The Mechaber says that the proper way to wear a talis cotton is to wear the talis cotton over your clothing. That means to wear the whole talis cotton over your shirt. Because it says, Re'isem oisai uzachartem. On that, says the Mishnah Berurah, those people who take the tzitzit strings and they tuck them into their pants, they're also liteinas hadin. What's the case? You're wearing the talis cotton over your shirt, and then you want to hide the tzitzit strings. So the talis cotton is over your shirt. And now you take the tzitzit strings and you tuck the tzitzit strings in your pants. What are the tzitzit strings doing in your pants? If the whole talis cotton is over your shirt, now you're taking the tzitzit strings and tucking them into your pants. Now it looks like you're hiding the tzitzit strings. But if the entire talis cotton is under your shirt, then the reason the tzitzit strings are tucked in is because the entire talis cotton is being worn under your clothing. Over there, the Mishnah Berurah doesn't say that there's a problem. Over there, the tzitzit strings are underneath your clothing because the entire talis cotton is underneath your clothing. The Mishnah Berurah's problem is when the talis cotton is over your clothing and you're tucking in the tzitzits. And I have a riot to the way I'm learning it from the Mishnah Berurah that I just read. Over here, Laman Aleph Amud Beis, Mishnah Berurah is cotton gimel. What does the Mishnah Berurah say? The Mishnah Berurah says, "O my high timer, gam betalis cotton shaloiv shoy tachas lamadov." When you wear a talis cotton underneath your clothing, ein behem mishom loig l'rosh. There's no problem of loig l'rosh. Why? Kevan shehu mechusa. Since it is covered. Since what is covered? The problem of loig l'rosh is the tzitzit strings. So the Mishnah Berurah is saying very clear, if you wear your talis cotton under your clothing, there's no problem of loig l'rosh. You know why? Because if you wear your talis cotton under your clothing, then the tzitzit strings are also under your clothing. What do you mean? Why doesn't the Mishnah Berurah have a problem with that? Why doesn't according to the people who learn the Mishnah Berurah in Siman Ches the other way, what the Chavetz Chaim should have said was, if you wear your talis cotton under your clothing, you still have to be careful to tuck in your tzitzits. Because, of course, you wear your tzitzits out. No. The Chavetz Chaim understood that people who wear their tzitzits under their clothing do not wear their tzitzits out. So I think this is a beferish raya that people are learning that Mishnah Berurah wrong. And the Mishnah Berurah never had a problem with people who wear their tzitzits in. It's just they're not reading that Mishnah Berurah properly. Okay. Continues the Chavetz Chaim over here in Ois Cotton Gimel in the brackets. Omer Pri Megadim Ashma, it is implied from the words of the Pri Megadim, the Yesh Lahachmer B'Talis Gadol, that you should be machmer on wearing a talis gadol in a beis hakvaros. You should never wear a talis gadol in a beis hakvaros. Af mechusa, even if the tzitzit strings are tucked in. Don't go into a beis hakvaros with a talis gadol. Why? Kevan shehu miyuchad l'tefila. Because the talis gadol is a beged that's miyuchad l'tefila. That's also loig l'rosh. You're coming into the beis hakvaros and you're saying, look at me, I could daven. I could wear a talis gadol, a beged am yuchad l'tefila. Don't do that. It's loig l'rosh. Achen bebeis Yosef lamash mekain the gamadar chachaim sasav v'kasav the mechusa mutter. They say that you could wear a talis gadol in the beis hakvaros as long as the tzitzit strings are covered. Okay, Sif Beis, 3 lines down in the Shulchan Aruch. Yesh noihagim. The Mechaber says that he has seen those people who have the minig likshar shnei tzitziyos shebishnei knafayim ze im ze, to take the tzitzit's tassel of one corner and the tzitzit's tassel from another corner and tie them together kishenichnasim lebeis hakvaros, when they go into a beis hakvaros. And says the Mechaber, v'lo ha'ilu klum b'takanosan, this does not accomplish anything. This does not take away the problem of loig l'rosh, and this is not efficacious. You should not do this. Instead, you have to make sure that your tzitzit strings are covered. Now, before we see the Mishnah Berurah inside, what were these people trying to accomplish by tying two of the tzitzit tassels together? So, I took a look at the Beis Yosef, and that's where the Mechaber is writing this Sif Beis. He's coming off of what he wrote in the Beis Yosef on the Torah. So I took a look at the Beis Yosef. The Beis Yosef, he brings down this minig. He says he saw people who do this, and he's wondering out loud in the Beis Yosef what these people were trying to accomplish, and he gives 2 possibilities. He said one possibility is, it could be that they thought if they take the tzitzit tassel from one corner, and they take the tzitzit tassel from another corner, and now they tie them together, it could be by doing that, they are being mevatel one of the kanfos. They're taking away one of the corners of the beged, and now it's no longer a 4-cornered beged, now it's only a 3-cornered beged. And if it's a 3-cornered beged, it's not chayiv in tzitzits. And if I'm not wearing a beged that's chayiv in tzitzits, it doesn't matter if my tzitzit strings are out. There's no loig l'rosh because I'm not being mekayim a mitzvah. That's one possibility. The other possibility of what they were trying to accomplish, says the Beis Yosef, is could be they thought that if they take 2 tzitzit tassels and they tie them together, they're not being mavatal one of the kanfos, they're being mavatal one of the tassels. And now I don't have tzitzits on all four corners. It's as if I only have tzitzits on three corners. Those are the two possibilities, says the Beis Yosef, of what they were trying to accomplish. And the Beis Yosef says they're not accomplishing either one. First of all, by just taking two tzitzit tassels and then tying them together, you're not mavatal any of the corners. We learned earlier that even if you would take one of the actual corners and you would roll it up and tie it into a knot so that it's no longer a corner, that's not mavatal the corner. In order to be mavatal the corner, you either have to cut it off or you have to professionally stitch it closed so that it shows that you're being mavatal the corner. But even if you would just fold it up and take a couple of loose stitches and put it in, that's not mavatal the corner, because it's obvious that you still plan on reopening it. And the same thing, if you tie it, it's obvious that you're still going to reopen it. That's not mavatal the corner. So simply taking two tzitzit tassels and tying it together is not mavatal any of the corners. It's still a beged of dal kanfos, it's still chayiv tzitzits. So if they're trying to be mavatal one of the corners, says the Beis Yosef, this does not work. Now, how about if they're trying to be mavatal one of the tzitzit tassels? So they want to say, I'm no longer wearing a beged that has tzitzits on all four corners. I'm only wearing a beged that has tzitzits on three corners. First of all, says the Beis Yosef, no, how are you mavatal the tzitzits? You're not mavatal the tzitzits. And not only that, if you were being mavatal the tzitzits, you would have a huge problem, because now you're being mavatal mitzvah say daraisa. You're wearing a beged of dalit kanfos without proper tzitzits affixed to it. So you're being mavatal a mitzvah say daraisa every second. So the Beis Yosef says this doesn't work, doesn't accomplish anything, and when you go into a Beis HaKvaros, you have to make sure to cover your tzitzits. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan Daled. Betakonosan. They're not accomplishing anything with this takana that they are doing. Explains the Mishnah Berurah, even though they're tying one tzitzit tassel to the other, they're not creating a situation where they're no longer being mekayim the mitzvah of tzitzits. Because whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish with this knot, whether you're trying to accomplish knocking off one corner or you're trying to accomplish knocking off one tzitzit tassel, you're not accomplishing either one, because you're not making a permanent knot. And therefore, since we know that this knot is asid to be reopened, you're planning on reopening it, whatever you're trying to accomplish with this tying, you're not accomplishing. Because we understand that your plan is to reopen the knot immediately upon leaving the Beis HaKvaros. This is the same as the halacha that we learned earlier in Siman Yud Gimel, of when you take one of the corners of the beged, roll it up and tie it into a knot, that's not considered being mavatal the corner. And furthermore, says the Chafetz Chaim, lefi daitam, according to what they seem to be wanting to accomplish, if they're trying to accomplish to be mavatal one of the tzitzit tassels, then if they would actually be mekayim what they're trying to be mekayim, it would be a huge problem. They would be mavatal mitzvah say daraisa. They would be wearing a beged of dalit kanfos without tzitzits, which surely would be terrible. Now we go to Sif Gimel. Says the Mechaber, Hanichnas toich arba amos shel meis oy shel kever. If you approach within 4 amos of a mace or of a grave, dinoi kinechnas lebeis hakvaros, that has the same halacha as if you actually walked into a Beis HaKvaros. So this problem of loeg l'rosh is not only if you actually walk into a cemetery. If you walk into a funeral home and you're within 4 amos of a mace, same problem. If you find an isolated kever, if you're within 4 amos of the isolated kever, same halacha applies. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Katan Hey, Shel Kever, Va'afilu bekever shel katan yesh lahakmim mishum loeg l'rosh. This, Rabbi Isai, is a fascinating Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah says like this: the whole problem over here of wearing the tzitzits out is a problem of loeg l'rosh. It looks like you're mocking the mace. Look, I could be Mekayim mitzvahs and you cannot. How about a kever of a katan? A katan was never chayiv in mitzvahs. When is there a problem of Leil Rush? You had somebody who, while he was alive, was chayiv in mitzvahs. Now he's no longer chayiv in mitzvahs. He feels bad. I had the opportunity to be Mekayim mitzvahs, now I no longer do. Now you come and you poke him in the eye. That's a problem of Leil Rush. But a katan was never chayiv in mitzvahs. So maybe there's no Leil Rush on a katan. Says the Mishnah Berurah, no, there is Leil Rush. Why? Very fascinating reason. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Shema nishmas adam gadolhu. Because maybe the neshama of that katan is a gilgal. Maybe that was a neshama that originally belonged to somebody who was a gadol. So in the past history of this neshama, right now this mace is buried as a katan. But maybe in a prior existence, this neshama did belong to a gadol. So this neshama already experienced a time when it was chayiv in mitzvahs, and therefore there is a Leil Rush problem on this neshama. Avo, however, the kever isha, when it comes to the kever of a woman, the bechayeha gamkein patura, who she was always exempt from the mitzvah of tzitzits. The woman never had a chiyuv of tzitzits. Leka mishum Leil Rush. Over there is no Leil Rush because this is a mitzvah that she was never chayiv in. From here you also see, and this is brought down, that we don't have a gilgal from a male to a female or a female to a male. It seems that a female neshama is a female neshama, a male neshama is a male neshama, and the two of them never switch. Okay. Let's go weiter over here in Sif Gimel. 2 lines off the end of the Siman, right by the Ois Cut and Zayin for the Mishnah Berurah, says the Mechaber, let's say somebody was nifter in the home. Now the Chever Kadisha comes to take the mace away. So there are various minhagim. One minig was that as soon as they went to pick up the mace from the home, immediately, if the mace was wearing a talis, if the mace is wearing a talis cotton, they immediately remove at least one of the tzitzits off of the talis cotton or off of the talis. Says the Mechaber, if that's the minig in that locale, in a place where the minig is to already remove the tzitzits from the talis of the mace in the house, so then if the people who are going to carry the mace, the katafim, the shirish of the word katafim is kasef, the shoulder. So these are the pallbearers, the ones who will carry the mace on their shoulders. Katafim, if the ones who are going to carry the mace, loivshim tzitzits, are wearing tzitzits, then immediately right away you have a problem of Leil Rush, and you have to make sure to cover the tzitzits. Says the Mishnah Berurah in Ois Katan Vav, Dinoi kinichtas lebeis akvaris, approaching within 4 amos of a mace or within 4 amos of a kever is the same as going into a beis akvaris. Ayin lekabam b'simin memhei b'Mishnah Berurah, where we will have a detailed discussion of that. Ois Katan Zayin b'makom shenai hagim v'achroinim iskimu. The achroinim conclude that afilu b'makom she'ein hagim lahaser, even in a place where the minig is not to remove the tzitzits from the mace in the house, gam kein ikam mishum Leil Rush. It doesn't matter. You still have an immediate problem of Leil Rush. The Mishnah Berurah, I think, is a little bit puzzled by what the Mechaber is saying over here. After all, the Mechaber just told us that approaching within 4 amos of a mace or within 4 amos of an isolated kever is the same as walking into a beis akvaris. Well, it therefore follows that immediately when you approach within 4 amos of a mace, there's a Leil Rush issue. So what's the chiddush that the Mechaber is telling us over here? In a place where they have the minig to remove the tzitzits from the mace in the bayis, then there's a Leil Rush problem for the people who are going to carry the mace. But it sounds like if they don't remove it, then there is no problem. Says the Mishnah Berurah, you should know that the Achronim conclude that it doesn't matter if the minig is this way or that way. As soon as you approach the mace, you have a loig l'rosh issue. You have to cover your tzitzits. Now, Lamaisa, I think the answer to the kasha, I don't think that the kasha is a very strong kasha. The answer to the kasha is, you can't tell me that there's loig l'rosh. You cannot tell me that I am being over loig l'rosh by the fact that I'm wearing tzitzits within 4 amos of a mace when we're allowing the tzitzits to remain on the mace himself. If we're in a place where the minig is to leave the tzitzits on the talis katan of the mace until we actually bring the mace to kfura, so I'm worse than the mace? The mace himself is wearing tzitzits right now. So the fact that I'm wearing tzitzits can't be loig l'rosh. Elamai, for some reason, we're not noig to remove the tzitzits until we actually bring them to the kever. So fine, so until that point, there's no loig l'rosh. The Achronim conclude not that way. The Achronim conclude that even if we're going to allow the tzitzits to remain on the mace, your tzitzits have to be covered, because somehow that's loig l'rosh. Okay. Eis Katan Ches, the Mishnah Berurah says, Hainu im atzitzis begulin k'deleil. Of course, again, the whole problem of loig l'rosh is only if your tzitzits are uncovered. Okay, now we go to Siman Chav Dalet. A very, very, very critically important siman, Rabbi Isai, and this is something that I have spoken about repeatedly since we began learning Hilchas Tzitzis. Truth is, it's a little puzzling to me why the Mechaber left this all the way to the end of Hilchas Tzitzis, because you'll notice this is the last siman of Hilchas Tzitzis. And the only thing I could conclude is that the Mechaber was very fortunate, and in his generation we didn't have the Nisayan, the struggle that we have in our generation, where many people seem to have developed a very lenient outlook. I'm searching for a better word, but they've become very kal in the mitzvah of tzitzis. They don't treat the mitzvah of tzitzis with the seriousness that it should be treated. Says the Mechaber, Siman Chav Dalet, Hanhagas levishas hatzitzis, the minig to wear tzitzis, u'sechara, and its reward, va'ansha, and its punishment, chas v'chalila, for one who does not do it, u'bai vav se'ifim, and here we have 6 se'ifim. Says the Mechaber in Sif Aleph. Midaraisa, this is brought down from a Gemara in Menachos, Mem Aleph Amud Aleph, im ein adam loivesh talis bas arba kanfos, if somebody is not wearing a 4-cornered beged, ein chai b'tzitzis, he's not chai b'tzitzis. So, din daraisa, even really din darabanan. You want to walk around all day without a 4-cornered beged, without tzitzits, harishos biyadcha. You're not chayiv in tzitzits. You're only chayiv in tzitzits if you happen to wear a 4-cornered beged. Then you have a chayiv asay. You must put tzitzits on that beged. If you don't, you're mavatal mitzvah asay daraisa. So strictly speaking, yes, you live back in the olden days where they wore 4-cornered cloaks, so you're a chayiv in tzitzits. Us nowadays, our begadim, generally speaking, are not 4-cornered begadim. So technically speaking, I mean, not just technically speaking, realistically speaking, we have no chiv tzitzis daraisa on the begadim that we generally wear. However, says the Mechaber, v'taiv, and it is good, v'nachain, and it is proper, liyois kal adam zahir, that every person should be careful. Lil baish talis katan, to wear a 4-cornered talis katan, kol hayom, all day long, kidei sheyizkar ha-mitzvahs b'chol rega, so that they should remember the mitzvahs of the Torah every moment. Va'al kain, and to this end, yesh ba'i chamisha ksharim. This is why the tzitzits on each corner of the beged have 5 sets of knots. Keneged chamisha chumshei Torah. This is to remind us of the chamisha chumshei Torah. Va'arba knafayim, and we wear a beged with 4 corners, shebechol tzad sheyifne yizkar, so that wherever life may take us, whatever direction we turn in, wherever we go, we should always remember the mitzvahs. V'nachayin, and it is proper, the Mechaber repeats himself from what he said back in Siman Ches, v'nachayin, it is proper l'lav shay al hamalbushim, to wear the talis katan over all the other clothing. Lepachais, at least, says the Mechaber, Yizayer, one should be careful, sheyeh lovush tzitzis b'shas hatefillah. At least during davening, one should make sure to wear a beged with tzitzits. So here you have a beferish mechaber. The mechaber says, "V'toiv, it is good, v'nachain, and it is proper. Liyos kol adam zayir lil baish talis cotton kalayim." That every person should be careful to wear a talis cotton all day long. Says the Mishnah Berurah cotton aleph. What's the reason for this? Said the mechaber, "Kidei sheyizkar hamitzvos b'chol rega," so that a person should remember the mitzvahs of the Torah Kedosha every moment. Says the Mishnah Berurah, "Dugma ladavar." An example of this is ka'adam hamazhir lechaveroi al inyan echad. When somebody gives a reminder to his friend, remember to count Sfira tonight. Remember you didn't daven Ma'ariv. Remember you didn't bench. Shekoisha kesher be'ezuroi kedei sheyizkerenu. What is one of the things a person does to remind himself? He would take off his belt and tie a knot in his belt. Or, my Rebbe, one of my Rabbeim, Chaim Mint Shlita, what he would do is, if he knew he didn't daven Ma'ariv or he didn't bench or something, so on the small piece of his tie, on the back piece of the tie, he would tie a knot in it. That way he can't take off his tie without opening the knot. So before he went to sleep, he would try to open the tie wouldn't open, and that would remind him. So, says the Mishnah Berurah over here, one of the things that the tzitzits does, these are strings that we're wearing on. It's a garment that reminds us of something. I had somebody ask me many years ago, what's the purpose of the tzitzit strings? My response was, it's a reminder that life has strings attached. Life is not just something that's a freebie. Life has strings attached. You have obligations, rabbis say. There are things that we have to do. Life has strings attached, things that we have to do, and things that we are not allowed to do. Ice cotton bays, the Mechaber said that it's nachain, it is proper to wear the talis cotton al hamalbushim, over our other begadim, says the Mishnah Berurah. And again, here I have a raya to the way I learned pshat in the Mishnah Berurah earlier. Ayin la'el b'simin chesif yud aleph b'Mishnah Berurah masha kasavnu sham. The Mishnah Berurah is being mitzayin us back to the earlier Mishnah Berurah, where he writes about the purpose of having the tzitzits out, when the Mechaber talks about that the whole talis cotton is supposed to be over your clothing. Ice cotton gimel, the Mechaber said, at least b'shas hatfila, at least during davening, you should make sure to wear a beged with tzitzits. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ice cotton gimel, ukriya shema. This is not only during Shemana Esrei, tefillah usually means Shemana Esrei, but also during Kriya Shema. V'isa b'zayar parsha shlach lecha, the Zayar says in parsha shlach, ta'akari Kriya Shema b'li tzitzits, if somebody says Kriya Shema without wearing tzitzits, meyud edu sheker ba'atzmai. He's saying false testimony upon himself. Shekari parsha tzitzits, because he's reading the parsha of tzitzits, he's reading Vayomer Hashem al Moshe lemar da'al b'nei Yisrael v'osu lehem tzitzits al kanfei bigdeihem. Right? Ve'ena mekayim akra. He's reading it, he's saying out loud, but he's not fulfilling it. He's not wearing tzitzits. Because of the Chayyim writes, Loi toiv oisim hamoyna am shemispalin baderech b'loi talis godel. The Chayyim says, people sometimes are traveling and they daven without wearing a talis godel. The Chayyim says that's not a good thing to do. Val piroiv, especially the Chayyim says, since unfortunately it's very common that the talis cotton ene osei kedin is not really proper. B'chol protav, it doesn't have all of the detailed requirements of a talis cotton. Maybe it's not big enough. Maybe it's not made out of the proper fabric. Maybe the dal kanfas are not proper. She'ir roy levarech, that you should be able to make a bracha on it. The gam, and furthermore, hu yashin by balayla, he might sleep in his talis cotton during the night. V'ayel el b'sim chesiv tezayin b'Mishnah Berurah. What's the problem with sleeping in it at night? Problem with sleeping in it at night is it becomes a challenge of when you're going to make the bracha. Okay, now we go to Sif Beis, says the Mechaber. And here again, I think we have, well, even though I shouldn't say this because this turns out to be a machlokes achrayim, I was going to say again, I think this is another area where people misread the Mechaber, but we'll get there. Says the Mechaber, Mitzvah le'echais hatzitzitz biyad smolis. There is a mitzvah to hold the tzitzit strings in the left hand, kineged libai, opposite your heart, up here, b'shas kriya shema, when you say kriya shema, remez ledavar, there's a hint to this in the pasuk where it says, That there's something that you're supposed to position above your heart. So this is a remez to the tzitzis, that when we say Kriya Shema, we're supposed to hold the tzitzis strings up keneged our hearts. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cutting daled biat smalis. The Mechaber says you hold the tzitzis strings in the left hand. Kosav b'kisvei ha'ari zechraynu levracha is written in the ksavim of the Ari HaKadosh. Shayoychazein bein kimitza lezeres, that you hold the tzitzit strings between the ring finger and the pinky. Okay, sheyagia leparsha tzitzis, and when you get up to the third parsha of Kriya Shema, the parsha of tzitzits, yikachem gam biyad yamin, then you take the tzitzits also in the right hand, v'yabit bahem, and you look at them. V'yu biyadai, and the tzitzits should remain in your hands, ad shemagia l'ne'emanim v'nechamadim lo'ad, until you get to the phrase in v'yatziv v'nachain v'kayim v'yashav v'neman, etc., etc., until you get to the phrase ne'emanim v'nechamadim lo'ad, and then after the word lo'ad, v'oz, and then yenashek atzitzitz, you kiss the tzitzits, v'yasirei miyadai, and then you let them go. So this is the first minig. This is the minig brought down from the Ari, which is you hold the tzitzit strings in the left hand between the pinky and the ring finger while you're saying the entire Kriya Shema. When you get to the third parsha of Kriya Shema, then you take the tzitzit strings also in the right hand and you extend them and you look at them and you hold them until nechamadim ne'emanim v'nechamadim lo'ad. Then you kiss them, and then you let them go. Ice cut and hay, al lavavecha v'halev hu b'smile. The lave, the heart, is on the left. U'mitzvah zu matzah la'adam min achet. This mitzvah of holding the tzitzis by Kriya Shema serves as a protection, as a way of saving a person from coming to Averis. Diksiv, like it says in the parsha of Kriya Shema, v'lo yisasuru acharei lavavechem v'acharei einechem. You will not turn after your heart and your eyes. Laban tizkeru, so that you will remember the mitzvahs. V'yisem kedoshim. V'after kol shar mitzvahs ein behem zois haskula la'atzila mi'etz hara. Even though other mitzvahs don't have this powerful segula to save you from the Yetzer Hara, tzitzits odif. Tzitzits is more powerful, Rabbi say. Tzitzits could save you from the Yetzer Hara. There's a story over there, Gemara in Menachos, of somebody who was Nabachas Chalila going to a Zaina, and the tzitzit saved him from being over an Avera. He realized, when he saw his tzitzit, he realized that this was something he could not do, and it saved him from being over an Avera. So you see, Rabbi side, there's a heroes that we should have on the mitzvah of tzitzits, and that's why the Yetzer Hara comes and the Yetzer Hara tries to get you not to do it. Because the Yetzer Hara knows that you found the antidote. You found the antibiotic. You found something that can kill him. So the Yetzer Hara tries whatever he gets. Hot. You're working. You're going to kill it. Oh, it's a bazayin. It's a bazayin to the tzitzits. What? I should be hammering in nails while I'm getting down on my hands and knees and doing plumbing work while I'm doing tzitzits. It's a bazayin for the mitzvahs, pashut. No. We're those tzitzits. B'chol yoyim, b'chol rega. Kedei lahaskir ha-mitzvahs b'chol rega. To remember the mitzvahs. And to have this powerful segula to save you from the Yetzer Hara. Okay? Siv Gimel. Another important halacha that many people are not aware of. Toiv lehistakel batzitzitz. It is good to look at the tzitzit strings. B'shas atifa. When you make the atifa with your talis. Kisham avarech. When you make the bracha. A lot of people, they extend the talis out over their heads. Way apart. The tzitzits are all the way to the right and all the way to the left. And then they take the talis and they wrap it around themselves. So when they made the bracha, the tzitzit strings were nowhere in sight. Says the mechaber over here, you're supposed to look at the tzitzits when you make the bracha. So what I do, could I trouble you to pass me the talis over there? What I do, and I'm not making a bracha, the talis that I'm using now is a talis shel tzibur, but we learned earlier that if you have kavana that you're not being kind of the talis, if you're a shliach tzibur So then the das of the tzibur is that the talis is here for you to be yotza mitzvah, and if you take it, it's yours. But if you don't have in mind to take it and to be kainit, so then it's a talis she'ula. It's a borrowed talis. We learned the halacha that a talis she'ula is not chayiv in tzitzis. So I am not actually going to make a bracha. A lot of people do this. They take the talis and they go like this. Then they go like this, they put it down, and they do their thing. However, they do the folding, but they do that. So where were the tzitzits when they made the bracha? Nowhere in sight. I do this. I take the talis, and I do this. I bring it forward. Now the tzitzits are in front of me. I can see the tzitzits. Now, even though you don't see my eyes, because my eyes are covered, that's because atifas yishme'elim. We learned earlier. We take the talis, we bring it down above our eyes, right? And now we do this. Now I have the tzitzit in front of me. If I look down, I can see the tzitzit strings. Then I go ahead, and then I make my atifa. So my atifa, then I have the top of the talis over here to my eyes, and I bring up over here across my face. So everything is covered except my eyes, and that's my atifa, and there I have my atifa batalis, and I saw the tzitzit strings when I made the bracha. So again, Sif Gimel Tayv Lehistaka Batzis B'Shas Atifa Kishem Avarech, says the Mishnah Berurah is Katan Vav Kishem Avarech. This is important when you make the bracha, Shenemar, because the pasuk says, Uri Isam Aisayu Zachartem. That the whole point of the tzitzis is that you should see them and remember the mitzvahs. So when you make the bracha, you should see them. Re'iyah Mevil De Zechira, seeing them brings you to remembrance. Zechira Mevil De Maisa, and remembrance is what brings you to the Maisa. Okay, we're going to stop over here because it went a little bit longer than I expected. Thank you so much for joining me for Liman HaTorah. The source of Liman HaTorah should be Megan against Klal Yisrael. The Baruch Shem should send Yeshua's, Refuas, Parnasa, and Shidduchim to all those in need. And we should be zeichet to see the Biaskel Tzedek B'mehera V'yameinu Amen. Be well.